We'll hear from some local school districts about what's new this year and some of the challenges that they're facing. That's next on WNIN Newsmakers. Welcome to WNIN Newsmakers. I'm April Nading. There are a few new laws that local school districts are needing to follow in addition to catching up from COVID. Here to talk about how the EVSC is handling the new school year is Jason Wibgenberg, Chief Communication Officer for the EVSC. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, it's good to be with you.
Tell me, we'll just start off with, how many students does EVSC currently work with?
Sure. Well, we have the pleasure of serving many students here in our community. We're a countywide system. Evansville-Vandenberg School Corporation serves between 22 and 23,000 students. That makes us the third largest school district in the state of Indiana. So with that is 40 schools, some additional programs along with those 40 schools. So, that's what makes it unique for us, April, is because we're serving students from one end of the county, one end of the city to the other. And it's such a great experience to be able to serve all of the different neighborhoods and communities in Evansville and Vandenberg County.
So you say we're third. I assume Indianapolis would be number one.
Yeah, actually, Fort Wayne, I believe, now is larger than IPS. And then, of course, you have all of the surrounding growing districts on the outer ring, the donut, if you will, around 465 in Indianapolis. So that entire metro area, of course, is very large, but there's actually numerous school corporations around Indianapolis in addition to IPS.
Okay. Well, what are some of the biggest challenges that EVSC is facing this year?
I think for us, you can use the word challenges. I think for us, it's just our goals every year. We want to take every student and maximize their experience. We want to take them as far as we can get them every year. I mean, that's our charge. Parents trust us to take their child and advance them as far as they can, whether they're a kindergartner, whether they're a senior in high school, getting them ready for whatever is going to come their way after graduation. So, it's looking to see where kids are in schools, how we can provide the absolute best experience to them so that they have learning opportunities that are going to challenge them and engage them. And that's what makes this job so enjoyable for all of our educators and all of our support staff, because we know we're making the difference in lives of students, and we know we're making their future lives better.
And it's affecting their families and everybody involved.
That's the great thing about schools when you talk to anyone who's been in education for a long time. Schools really can be kind of the epicenter, if you will, of the communities, the neighborhoods that they serve. And you get families that have several children, and so they're ingrained in that school, maybe from the first to the last child to leave that school over a period of a number of years. And you have those connections and those relationships, and I think that's what makes this experience such a positive one for everyone who's fortunate enough to consider themselves an educator.
So in some ways, you guys have a very simple yet humongous goal of trying to grow everyone to make it through the school, their career in school, and become successful in some way.
Well, you look at teachers in general, no matter where they teach in the country, in the state of Indiana, but specifically I can talk about our educators. We have about 3,400 employees in the EVSC, a little over half of whom are certified teaching staff or administrators or counselors. And so both of those roles, whether you're on the certified side and you're directly providing instruction, or on the side, the support staff side, the bus drivers, the cafeteria workers, secretaries, you name it. Everyone's just coming together, being a part of the team. And is it a large job? Absolutely, but it's one where no 2 days are ever the same. And it's just such a fascinating experience.
So what are some of the new laws that the Indiana General Assembly passed or enacted that you're having to deal with this year that maybe you didn't last year?
Yeah, well, I think a couple of things that stand out. One actually was the previous year, and that was Indiana changed to go away from textbook rentals. So that funding has shifted then. The state provides some reimbursement, and the districts work that into their budget. So that's one change that parents see, and this is actually the second year, because normally this time of year they would have received, prior to last year, textbook rental notices, things like that. That's no longer an issue for who's your parents. So that was a big change that happened last year, and certainly people are continuing to adjust to that. And I think that's been a great experience for all of our families. School districts are having to still work out the details of that within their budget and what that looks like. And then, of course, this has been in the news recently. There was a new law that required Indiana school districts throughout the entire state to enact a policy regarding wireless communication devices, and we're talking about cell phones there and smartwatches and earbuds. So that's been somewhat of a change, but I'm happy to report that I think things are going well with that.
What was it? What does the law say? I'm sure it's probably a lot of verbiage, but basically, is it they just can't have them on them?
Yeah, the law actually said school districts throughout the entire state have to create a policy about that to not have them. And then it's kind of up to the school districts then to work out, as they say, the devil in the details with that. And so what that really looks like is you're not seeing wireless communication devices by students in schools throughout the state of Indiana. And, you know, it's been interesting. I've actually talked to not only staff, but to students as well about this, especially at the high school level. It's not as much of a change for elementary and middle, but at high school is. We all are attached to our phones. We know that. Adults are. Certainly teenagers are. But I think the important thing about that is it has taken that distraction away from the students during the day when, of course, we all know they should be learning.
Right.
And just in talking to some high school students recently, they said, you know what, do I miss having my phone? Yeah, because they said I'm so used to having it with me all the time, but they said there's no doubt that I'm able to focus better because I'm not hearing my phone ding or vibrate, buzz. I'm not looking down to see what the latest text or notification was. I'm not worried about what's on social media. And they said we can really focus more on what the teacher is saying. We can engage better. They even talked about how they're able to talk to their friends better. You know, you walk into a classroom.
You have to look at them and talk.
Yeah, they're actually engaging, just like you and I are.
Right.
So far, we're only in the second week of school now, but everyone's still getting accustomed to it, getting used to it. We've tried to make families aware of what this is looking like. Of course, we made students aware of that as well, and when there's slip-ups, we're addressing that. High school students can have them during the cafeteria because it's really during instructional time they're not allowed to have them. And so cafeteria, they can still have them, but throughout the rest of the day, it's going well. And for us and for our students, for well over 10 years now, we've actually provided one-to-one devices, meaning every kindergartner through senior in high school has a device we provide for them, either a laptop or an iPad. And so we're still utilizing technology. That's still part of classroom instruction. We just don't have the distractions of that personal device, and I think it's going to be a win, and it seems like it's going well.
It almost seems like cafeteria time would be another time they shouldn't have them so they can interact a little more and have more social time.
And you're right. And, you know, of course, students want to be able to check their phone during that time. And I think it's a nice compromise, though.
Sure, yeah.
Because they still have that social time between classes, before class, after class. They still have those times during class when they do group-type projects and where they're working together and collaborating. So they still have those opportunities. At least they know in the middle of the day during their lunch period they can do a quick check of their phone. But you know, again, I think it's interesting to hear those students provide their feedback on that and to say, yeah, it's probably a good thing.
One other thing about that, are there exceptions for accessibility devices, or how does that work?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, first of all, in emergency situations, you know, that was a question that came up at the beginning. How are we going to reach our student if there's emergencies? Well, we're going back to what we did for many, many years, decades before cell phones. You call the school office. The school office, of course, is going to relay a message to a student if it's an important message, something that's urgent.
Right.
And then if it's a medical type issue related to student health, they have a student health plan in those cases where families can work that out with both the principal and the school nurse to make that part of the school health or the student's health plan if that is a necessity.
Okay. Now, there are some statistics that state kids in Indiana are behind in language arts and math proficiency, especially since the COVID shutdown.
Sure.
How did EVSC do with testing this past year, and what are some of the ways they're trying to mitigate those losses?
For us, it's all about doing whatever it takes to see that growth. So here in EVSC, we have well over 60 academic coaches that are embedded throughout our schools, and they actually are supporting teachers and helping to look at data and help them with strategies so that we can make sure students are going to be advancing. We have small group intervention plans in place where students can come together and work on those skills, especially at the younger grade levels, to make sure they're getting caught up. So, we don't run from any type of student performance data. We use that so that we can then frame what's coming up next in terms of academics and how we're addressing that. But by putting those structures in, by looking at our reading curriculum and embedding a new reading curriculum over the last few years, we know that by sticking with that consistently, we're going to continue to see growth.
And at some point, we're just going to look back and go, what happened in 2020?
Well, and it's interesting you bring that up, because we do feel like here we are in the fall of 2024, and we've had several conversations recently where we've said it finally feels like COVID is well in the rearview mirror. Obviously, we've been getting back to normal every year, but when you look at, for example, our hiring rates and the vacancies, we're starting to return back to employee levels that we had pre-COVID, because we know all businesses and industries saw a real struggle with that immediately coming out of COVID, filling vacancies. So when you look at that, when you look at those school experiences, we do feel like that's well in our history, and we're able to look forward and truly be back to that normal situation where students are able to engage, families are able to be a part of school, employees are in place, and we can look forward.
Okay.
It's a good feeling to have.
I'm sure it is.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. This is some good information.
Great to have this conversation with you.
Next, we have the superintendent of South Gibson School Corporation, Dr. Brian Perry. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
So tell me a little bit about the school corporation. How many students does your area serve each year?
So we're one of 3 school corporations in Gibson County, and we serve roughly 2,130 students, so we're a little bit small, more of a rural community. And we have some fantastic students and families that we serve, and we're very blessed.
I'd like to think that's a little more manageable, maybe.
Yes, probably a little more manageable than what Jason might have been used to, yes.
The 22,000.
22,000, yeah, as I'm familiar with, so yes.
So how has South Gibson School Corporation handled students falling behind as a result of COVID? I know that's happened everywhere.
Students did fall behind a little bit, and when I arrived, what we did, we kept class sizes smaller. We implemented the use of some title dollars to get additional help into the classrooms, and I can think of some classrooms that were a little bit behind when I arrived, but when I reviewed the iStep scores, or excuse me, iLearn scores this year, the students were catching up and were well above state average at that point in time. So we've been really successful, we believe, in getting kids caught up and where they should be. The longer they're with us, the better they do.
Right. Now, were there any positives that came from the COVID experience?
Well, I think the positives were the funds that were funneled into schools to get additional help to help students, but also help schools do AC work, HVAC work, things like that, that are very expensive and have to come out of the funds you get. So there was some real positives. Those are just a couple that came out of it, but we feel like the additional help was one of the biggest ones, and we've retained some of that help too because it was so positive.
Was it also helpful, I mean, as far as, like e-learning and that kind of things, like they can have days now where maybe they're going to have an e-learning day. I mean, that was something nobody really did before.
Right, and I wouldn't advocate going back to e-learning.
No,
we only
not
use,
full time. Right.
We use asynchronous e-learning for snow days. We're allowed to use up to 3 a year, but beyond that, we haven't delved into going any deeper in that because we still believe that the best thing for our students is to be with our tremendous teachers every day in the classroom.
Right, and then that's the whole socialization thing. With,
Absolutely.
With friends. I mean, I loved school, so.
Well, even the adults love being in the classroom and being around their peers and colleagues, and they're sharing ideas. It makes a big difference when everybody's in a building together.
Right, rather than sitting at home looking at the computer.
Absolutely.
Now, have you implemented any successful strategies as far as alleviating the teacher shortage, which is affecting everyone, it seems like?
At South Gibson, we're very fortunate when we have openings. One, we don't have a lot of openings. People tend to stay there for a very long time. And when we do have openings, we have a lot of applicants, and we're able to get some really quality teachers. So we've been actually pretty blessed in that we've not had to deal with that tremendously at this point. So it's unusual. There's definitely a teacher shortage in this country, but we are a little insulated at this point, probably because of size and so forth. But we've been very blessed to be able to retain and attract.
Do you find, I went to school, my high school years were in a very small community in Indiana, and a lot of the teachers, it seemed like, had grown up in that area. Do you find that with your school corporation?
Oh, absolutely. When I arrived, there's a vast majority of them there, grew up in that area. They want to come back to there, and that's very positive because they have real pride in the schools, and that's one thing they do top to bottom. We were talking earlier outside, and we have K-8 schools, and they're community schools, and the communities take real pride in those schools, and I think that's a real positive.
Right. I know my oldest grandchildren are in the Indianapolis school system in that area, and they go to like 5 different schools before they finally graduate, I think, because there's so many kids.
Yeah, and ours go to 2, and they all matriculate to one high school. They know each other before they get there because they're interacting, so it's really a positive experience.
I'd say there are some real positives to
Absolutely.
that, I think. What challenges are you facing, though, right now?
I think if I were thinking of a challenge for us is the State Board of Education just met today to work on the new diplomas that impact kids who are already in your buildings. That's going to be a real challenge for us and for everybody. And not knowing yet what we're going to be able to do and not do, that's causing some angst as we try to prepare kids to be as successful as they possibly can be.
What's the deadline on that? When are they supposed to
Well,
have
they
this?
said today that they released the new standards. They're going to take 30 days of feedback on it. They're talking November when that might come out. And schools are going to be signing kids up for classes in December and getting them ready for next year, making staffing adjustments. So it's a really tight timeline.
What kind of changes are they talking about? Exactly?
Well, they're going to go to what they call the GPS diploma, or the GPS Plus diploma, which includes work-based learning, which means kids will be out going into the work community to try and get time to get their diploma. But there was also a lot of pushback on needing academic pursuits because IU, Purdue, Indiana State, for example, came out against that diploma because kids weren't going to be ready for college in that scenario. So there's just been a lot of give and take on this, and we're meeting regularly trying to prepare for this and to prepare all of our kids to be successful.
Right. Now, what kind of work would they be doing? What does that mean?
An internship maybe at a local hospital, or maybe an internship at a local lawn and garden where they're working on small engines. There could be there's all kinds of things that could be internships.
Sure.
And and you're going to need people to help manage those internships
Right.
too.
It's just someone's going to have to manage that program.
And employers have to adjust to having teens in the workforce and in the workplace. So there's a lot that comes with it, and I think that's probably our biggest issue right now as we think about how we prepare for the future.
So what about the new law that went into effect regarding the cell phones? How has that been for you guys?
It's been a smooth transition. I think I definitely agree that even adults need to put their phones down at times and be concentrating on what they're doing. I think it's good for the classroom. We haven't had a lot of problems with it. We do allow it in the lunchroom, buildings set up so they can do that, and in the passing periods so they get some of that. But we've not had a lot of issues at this point, and it's been a smooth transition.
So how is it working exactly? Like, do they come in in their first class they put it on the teacher's desk, or how, and then pick it up on their way out?
No, we don't do that. We have some that use like a shoe tree, or if you will, that put them in the shoe tree, but they're supposed to be put away and turned off and put away. So if a teacher were to see one, they would have a conversation with them. At some point, they might end up with administration, but we haven't had those issues. They've been very respectful, and we've had parent support. And being able to see it, maybe a passing period of lunch, that kind of helps alleviate the problems.
But they're taking it from class to class, just turned off, or maybe.
I would suspect they are.
Okay. I didn't know if they left it somewhere at the beginning of the day and then they didn't get it till lunch.
You'd have to go out and purchase things, buy locks, things like that.
Sure.
This could all change. And we don't want to take on the liability for that either.
No, right, because cell phones are expensive.
They're very expensive. And, our kids have been respectful. So what we've been doing is working, and we're very happy with it.
So are there any other things you'd like for the public to know about South Gibson School Corporation and anything exciting going on with them?
I'm very proud of the school corporation we have. Our iLearn scores are well above the state average. We're very happy. As the challenge for us is just always trying to be better and using data to drive our kids' instructional improvement. So, and we're getting much better at that all the time. But we have a lot of great things going on up there, and just really proud to be a part of it and be able to lead it, and very blessed to do so.
Well, good. Well, thank you so much for your information. It was good. here to talk about going back to school in Mount Vernon is Dr. Scott Streeter, principal of Mount Vernon High School. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
So tell me a little about how many students are you managing, or trying to manage, in the Mount Vernon School District and high school?
Well, this year we started off with roughly 620. The freshman class, luckily, is larger. There's over 180 freshmen this year, so that's positive. And then I'm understanding that our 8th grade class is going to be large again as well. So we're a little over 600 right now.
So is that larger than other years, or how
it
is
is.
that
You know,
compare?
my background is, before I came to Mount Vernon, I was the principal at North Posey for 18 years. So I took a few years off of education, and I am back in now at the rival school to the south. So yeah, so it's more. Mount Vernon has more students than North Posey, so there's a few more. Sure.
I didn't know if there was some kind of influx for some reason, more people were coming in.
No. Obviously the industry is doing well
Sure.
there along the river, and we for the last 20 years, I think school-age children population has steadily decreased in all of Posey County. But we're kind of hoping that with with SABIC and BWXT and Country Mark and those industries that we're partnering with, that there could be some more families that do move in, that they would choose Mount Vernon over maybe some of the area schools in the area. Yeah.
So we're going to dive in here and talk about the high school graduation requirements.
Yeah, right.
I know
Yeah.
that's going to be revised, and the current draft has had some pushback in that it eliminates the honors degree. And what kind of, maybe you can discuss, what kind of changes they're talking about? How is that going to affect people?
April, there's a lot going on with that, but ultimately, at the building level, what we have to trust is that, I think Dr. Jenner has worked extremely hard working with the State Board of Education. I've been happy to see when everything first kind of rolled out, that they've been very open and listening to educators, to teachers, and to the administration about what we felt could work and what wouldn't work. And so this morning, in between being out in the halls and in my office, I was trying to listen to the board meeting on my computer, and so I think right now, I think we've got to try to have an open mind, because
Sure.
ultimately, I think the goal is that we have to do something about student apathy, trying to make school more real world relevant for everybody that's there, and I think that's what the state is trying to do. Trying to create and in some way, it's nice to be in Indiana, and the fact that we're kind of stepping out there on an island and being the first in the country to kind of go after, okay, what can we do to make our diploma better, and how do you make it work for all the kids? Because one thing, the message that I gave to my students that first day is, we want you to be here. We want to try to do the best we can to make you achieve your goals. Obviously know what those goals are, and then make school relevant for them. And so we're hoping that this new diploma, it kind of gives us the flexibility that that we're maybe wanting to see.
Why is this happening exactly?
Well, I think when you look at the data, and I know, going back to COVID, I was a building principal when COVID hit, and just. It was a tough time, and trying to get the students back into routine. And now some students do benefit from an online program, or and maybe not actually being physically in their seat at school, but ultimately, I mean, it is you have to be in front of a great adult, a great teacher, right, to learn. And so that's so I just think that the state recognized that there were things that we needed to do better to try to help kids. I think the rate has gone below 60% of those saying that they were going to move on to a post-secondary opportunity. And so I just think that the powers that be and the people that we elect or that we work for, they saw a need.
Yeah, talking about them being in front, having a great teacher in front of them. Have you had to deal much with the teacher shortage, and if so, what have you been doing, or how have you counteracted that?
April, I could talk to you for hours about that. Yes, definitely. Became a building principal in 2006. I remember going to my first USI teacher recruitment fair. Limited numbers, a good managing number of school corporations that were there, mostly local. and then they would release the seniors, and they, elementary, secondary level, all kinds of prospective applicants strolling in. They're very eager, the faces, they're just like, it was the number of resumes that we would get. When there was an opening, you would have an opportunity to be able to pre-screen and know who you wanted to interview before you brought them in, because there were options. There were some good people being turned out by the universities. Now, you jump forward to 2024, it's completely opposite. There are triple to quadruple the number of corporations that are in the room looking for teachers, and very limited number of education majors that so basically, it's in 20 years, I've seen it turn into you interview them to them interviewing you.
What about the school phone, cell phone ban, or the new legislation regarding that? How's that going for you?
Well, we're making it work. We have a very large building, and so probably a building that's built for 1,400 students, and we have 600. So the way our lunches are set up, we were originally thinking that we were going to try to let the kids have their phones during lunch, but the disruption that would have been there with them going to their lockers, because we have 3 lunch periods, and you'll go and you to lunch and you go to class, and then we have then the other students will go to class and then go to lunch and then come back, and so there was just a lot of transition, a lot of lockers open, everything. So we've made it to where before school, you use your phone, do whatever you want to. But before you go into class, we want the phone in the locker. Now, granted, are we going looking for trouble or looking for problems? The kids probably have their phones on them, but like Dr. Perry mentioned earlier, if we want them off. If they're not disrupting class, and we're not going to go looking for an issue.
It doesn't really matter where it is, as long as they're not looking at it.
You really don't want it on them, but if they have it on them and they're not pulling it out and it's not disrupting class, we're letting the classroom teacher handle that. But one of the great things that we've seen at lunch, with them not having their phones at lunch, they're talking to each other.
Right.
There is actual interaction. One thing, since I'm new at Mount Vernon, I'm trying to do my best I can to get around to the students at lunch, try to talk to them without them thinking that I'm weird, and just trying to build relationships. And they actually, their eyes are up, and there's engagement because they're not on their phones, and they're talking to their peers. The other day, I walked through, and the kids are playing Uno.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So hopefully there's going to be some positives out there. Like you said, you hope that the powers that be know what they're doing,
right.
And you have to, because we're going to do whatever we're told that we have to do, and then we just make it work.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I think it's good. It sounds like you're off to a positive start. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks again to all of our guests for talking about the new school year. I'm April Nading. Thanks for watching WNIN Newsmakers.